Welcome everyone to another edition of the one-on-one interviews. And today we have Peter Kariuki. Peter is the Secretary General at Etno, which is the advisory board for ethnic relations at the Ministry of Justice in Finland. Peter has had a very colorful work experience, having worked in both the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of Interior for over 10 years, and one of the very few people of African descent working in these ministries. And apart from speaking 5 languages and with a master's in philosophy, Peter is one of the guys who embodies the idea of being or looking young. So so we're excited to have Peter around and hopefully get to learn a bit more about him and his journey.
Thanks, PJ.
Yeah,
Thanks
welcome.
So Thanks.
Tell us about your background.
Well, apart from looking young,
Yeah.
which I don't, based on the number of gray hairs I have on my head.
Right. By the way, you guys should guess how old this guy is. At the end of the program, we'll tell you. Let's see how close you get. Go ahead.
Sticking to the more important issues, other than my age. Well, I'm Kenyan by origin, Finn by naturalization, and I've lived in Finland for over 23 years now, and came to Finland as a young adventurous man to study at the University of Tampere back then, and did my bachelor's master's degree there. Then started working actually in Tampere.
Right.
Tampere during that after my studies, and about 10 years ago moved. Or actually transferred to work at the government, and then about 9 years ago moved to live in the capital region.
Right. So studying brought you here, but how did you get from Kenya to Finland?
That's a good question.
Because
actually.
for me, I was only an adult when I knew that Finland was more than a place full of just snow.
Yeah. Well, I think your assumptions were not unique. I knew quite little about Finland,
Right.
but my fortune was that my sister had been visiting Finland. She had friends here, and she was visiting Finland in the mid and late 90s, and she visited Tampere, and somehow by some coincidence was able to get the application forms to the university. Then there was no online application,
Right.
trust me, back then.
Yeah.
So she brought me this application forms, and I applied to the university as a chance, not knowing where it would lead to.
Right.
And in a few months, I got an invitation. I got an invitation to study at the University of Tampere,
Right.
and it was a matter of choosing: do I take the opportunity or do I let it pass? And I took it, and all of a sudden I had a ticket. You didn't need a visa to come to Finland back then,
right,
so I was able to come quite freely.
So what year was this?
This was in 1995.
Right.
Yeah, so
What was it as a young 20-year-old here in Finland for the first time?
it was great. It was great to be away from the home environment.
Right.
In the beginning, it was great. I was a bit adventurous. I wanted to see the world.
Right.
So that this was an opportunity to also see the world and see it in my own terms,
Right.
because I was coming here to study.
Right.
Started living the typical student life, and it was fun in the beginning, and it was good for me.
Right. So what was it like though when you first stepped like from the airplane into Finland, into Vantaa, and then into Tampere?
It was cold. It was
Right.
August. It was August, but it was cold.
Right.
It was cold, surprisingly cold.
Yeah.
Even though it was still summer.
Right.
And I remember the first thing that somehow that actually returns to me every year is the smell of early autumn.
Right.
There's this very unique smell of autumn. That's I think it's when the leaves are beginning to yellow.
Yeah.
There's a very very unique scent
Right.
lingering in there, and it's the first thing that got me, and it's never left me ever since. It comes back. It's very reminiscent. It comes back to me every year.
Very nice.
At the beginning of autumn.
I remember my first time in Finland. It was in Kouvola. Went to play for Kouvola, and for a whole week I didn't see the sun because it was in November. Called my agent. I said, "Take me back, man.
Oh my God!"
Give me another good. But then I got to know the people. Got to see a little bit of sun. After the week, and came to find out Finland is nice. After all,
must have been tough.
It was tough. But maybe not as tough as.
No. Mine was a bit easier. I came earlier. Mine was a bit easier.
Good point. But before we continue, I want to go back a little bit for you to tell us what was growing up in Kenya like as a child, or.
I had a good upbringing. I was born and raised in Nairobi, and my dad was a civil servant, worked for the government. My mom was an entrepreneur in real estate. Right. So I'd say I had a good upbringing.
Okay.
And
so upper middle class.
Probably, you could say upper middle class.
Right.
And my mom was and still is very, very keen on school, on education.
Right.
So that was a no choice area.
Yeah.
Education, which I think is quite typical of many African moms.
Right,
education is it's like their way to it's like their retirement benefit plan.
Exactly, right.
So make sure that you have a good education.
Yeah.
So she was very keen on that. What's different is that in a typical former British colony as Kenya is, I went to a boarding secondary school, which was the best experience of my life. Which is actually it was like I built most of my character during my boarding school life.
Interesting.
Because you're away for 9 months in a year.
Right.
In a boarding school, and you bond with your friends for life, guys that we are still friends with. Right. Still attend one another's weddings and attend one another's kids' birthdays and all that.
Was it a mixed boarding school?
No. It was a boys' boarding school. It was only boys' boarding school, and very typical British. So straight trousers, black polished shoes, tie and blazer with emblems and everything. Very typical British, very, very typical British school. Right. So, but I think it helped me build my character, and it gave me actually the courage to come to Finland at 20 years old. Right. I was ready. It wasn't a big deal to me to go abroad, especially when thinking that my mentality was that I'm just going to be here for a while, and then go back. Right. So I was easy.
Yeah.
It was not going to be
definitely built your independence.
Yes, it did. It did.
So what was your decision about, or your decision to study philosophy? What was it based on?
Actually, to clarify on that, I have a master's of philosophy. Did some philosophy, definitely, and I'm still very keen on philosophy. But I focus quite much on international politics and world history. Right. So those are like my passions. Right. Actually, all of them. Right. My wife hates it, especially my philosophical discussions. She hates them. She's like, it's impossible to argue with you. But I've always been interested in learning, in knowing, in argumentation, logic, just things that don't interest many people. Sure. It's not that I'm anyhow, I think I'm very average, but it's just maybe an interest that I have developed over time. Right. To learn and question things.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I want to bring up a point, but then I'll segue to that, and one of one of the issues that many immigrants here in Finland face is this difficulty to study what they want to study because they're being pushed into different directions. Have you had any issues with that studying in the University of Tampere? Or was it,
No.
Right.
No, I really do understand where you're coming from with
Right.
that point, especially for young people who want to build their careers, and especially they're at what you call transition periods,
Right.
where they're moving either from elementary school to
Right.
or from upper secondary school to vocational school or to university or whatever. It's very important that the person who is advising this young person or this child in that case to give them the right type of advice and not to stereotypify this child
Right.
and lead them into a so said career path that's more lucrative or more marketable just for that reason.
Right.
I think it's very short term. Yes, right? It's short term to ascertain somehow their employment security and all that. It's very important to give the right tools and the right tools of encouragement to this child, with the idea of dreaming big. You know, if we dream, I think it was the former president of Liberia who. I think Salif Johnson, who said something, that's a very good quote. I hope this is her quote, and I'll be paraphrasing here. She said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Yeah, I think you know the quote. So why shortchange this young person or this child by making them dream small instead of helping them to dream big?
Right. Very good point.
So...
And to the benefit of
exactly,
society.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I want you to talk a little bit about having been through the education system here.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest difference in your boarding school education in Kenya? Or is there any at all with the British system, for example, that you've studied?
Yes, very big difference. Very big difference. And my wife is a teacher, and so we discuss a lot about education, about pedagogical issues. And one of the, I don't know whether this is typical in Gambia, for example, where the impetus is in being successful in examinations, unlike the impetus being in creating very good basic skills, team building skills, self-studying skills, lifelong education skills. And these are things that I've come to learn over time when I've been here. So I was very good at passing exams. So, but when you come to the real world, you really need skills that make you a good team player, that make you a good, independent, diligent, honest worker. You need skills that make you disciplined and routined enough to do things, even when they're boring. So I had to learn these skills in school. And if I could do something...
And this was in school in Tampere?
Yes, this was in university, which was a very big... Actually, it was one of the biggest drawbacks to my education, especially in my second year, when I almost quit. Because the tools that I had were not ready for that kind of independent university life. I was so used to a structured education system that coming to an education system that was independent, where you had to have the personal skills, individual skills to manage, I was struggling.
Yeah, I say it often because coming from Gambia as well, with an African background, it's, passive learning. So you only receive what the teachers are telling you is what you take in, and you don't get to challenge, you don't get to do any of that independent learning. It's very, very structured, and then when you come here, it hits you. But then not only is it in just the education system, it's at home, it's in different places where it's very, very structured, and therefore makes the integration, for example, a bit difficult for people with that kind of background.
Yeah.
So my question to that is, what was your first job like, considering you just finished your university, transitioning into your first job? What did you decide to do right after that?
Well, I think even before I got to that point where I could decide on what to do, I had to make many choices based on the circumstances that I was in. I was a young student. I didn't want to burden my parents with financial support from home. I wanted to be as independent as possible, so I had to do some kind of job, and I started doing very easy manual labor jobs, cleaning, for example. Did different jobs for different companies, cleaning, night cleaning, stairs cleaning, whatever, dishes, whatever. I did that just to build that sense of independence, and it didn't bother me. I had to do it. But then once I graduated, then actually the first job that I did, I was interviewed for a particular position in regional government, and I was second. After the interviews, and to my fortune, the guy who was selected for the position got another job. Surprise, surprise, to the Ministry of the Interior then.
Interesting, yeah.
And he's actually still a good friend of mine. He's still at the Ministry of the Interior. And but that was way before I got into government myself. So I was called for this position after this guy left.
Okay.
And that was just a 6-month stint.
Right.
But it was my first experience doing a white collar job.
Right.
And that was very challenging.
Yeah.
Because my finish is better today than it was yesterday.
Of course. Yeah.
So you can imagine how it was 15 years ago.
Right.
So, and
my finish is probably worse.
It's not about being good or what. No. Let's not compare. Let's not compare, because what you do for a living is very different from what I do for a living. Yeah. So, not in a good or bad sense, but it could be somebody really needs like excellent finish skills to do what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
But there's somebody else who doesn't need that higher level of lingual skills and does basically just as excellent work as the other.
You see, this is why he works for the government.
Yeah.
Very diplomatic. But tell me, what job was that? What was the...
I was actually a planning officer at the Regional Center for the Economy, Transport and the Environment.
Okay, so you have a 6-month stint.
Yeah, 6-month stint. And it ended. And what you wanted to ask about what kind of job it was? Or?
I mean, yeah, what did you do?
Yeah, actually it was related to migration policy.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, I wanted to say this before actually I got this job.
Yeah.
I was very active in the Tampere region network against racism.
Very good. Yeah.
Rasmus network.
Right.
So at some point in time, I was actually heading the Rasmus network.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which was actually one of the most active networks nationally.
Right.
Because instead of just organizing events during the Day Against Racism, the 21st of March, we were actually organizing a week against racism.
Oh, wow.
So it was a whole week of events.
Yeah.
We had a small organization behind the network that was running the network, and it was getting funding from different sources, and then we would fund different events during the whole week.
Wow, right.
So we didn't bother anyone with the bureaucracy of applying for money or of reporting on money or anything, but we were able to provide the funds so the people who were interested in organizing something could do something.
Right.
So it was an ideal environment.
Yeah.
And the network was a network whereby it was anyone interested, individual or organization, public or private or NGO, could come in and just pitch ideas, and then we would organize the week, and then we thank everyone, report on it, and then till next year. Okay. It was very simple and very smart.
Yeah, yeah. And this is pro bono, basically.
Yeah, basically pro bono. Yeah,
Right.
definitely pro bono. Doing these blue collar jobs and doing studying at the same time.
Yeah.
So by the time I was graduating and getting into the labor market, I had built a network already.
Exactly right.
So actually, one of the people who were interviewing me for this first job
Yeah.
was a person who was active in the network.
There we go. Right.
And not being biased or anything, it was actually easy to go to this place of employment because I knew some of the people there.
Right.
So despite the job being very hard, it was at least easing in the sense of the familiarity of the environment and the people who were there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point to note, because sometimes people see only the end result of where the person is.
Yeah.
But then these are the actual details that matter.
Yeah.
You don't just jump from point A to point B. Most people don't just jump from point A to point B like that. There are things, in between that help you get to that point.
Yeah.
And many times it's free work that you have to do.
Yeah.
It's putting your heart and soul in something that you are not getting paid for.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the lessons that especially young people, but people everywhere, should be able to maybe inculcate that the processes are important.
Yeah.
And so this gets you to your first job, to be
to be a planning officer, at the regional office.
Yeah,
Very
6
good
month gig.
experience.
So how do you jump from there to being the
Yes, so
manager?
6 months gig.
Yeah.
That ended. Then through networks again,
Right.
I got a 3 month gig to work at the Finnish Red Cross.
Right.
To work on another integration project.
Okay.
Which was called Kotopolku, and built networks within the Finnish Red Cross,
Right.
especially in the Tampere region. Very good experience, taught me new things, and it was actually my first experience of doing hands-on work, of influencing people. We would go to schools and talk to kids about different issues, integration, multiculturalism, and all that. So it was my first start from coming from university, where I didn't basically do any kind of hands-on client work, to the regional government, where I still didn't do any kind of, to grassroots, where we would literally go and meet kids and people, and that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then from there, 3 months, moved to work for a museum on a multicultural project in Tampere, the Labour Museum in Tampere. Did that for about 6 months.
Okay.
And most of these were just coming through networks.
Right. Right.
You know this guy, this guy is looking for somebody who could run a project. Hey, I can be available from then.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, I made my first, more stable breakthrough when I went to work for Victim Support Finland.
Right.
That had got funding from the then Slot Machine Association to create, to diversify its activities to be more multicultural, or cultural sensitive, culturally sensitive. So I was selected I was given the opportunity to be the project manager at a developmental project. So I worked with that for 3 years.
Okay. And you being the project manager, how many other people were?
We were actually 3 people.
Okay.
We were 3 people. No, actually 4. It was me and 3 other colleagues.
Okay. Would you consider this as your first managerial position?
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
Okay.
It was my first managerial position.
So how
But
was
I
that?
didn't want to see myself as a manager. I was just a colleague who was just giving ideas, contributing to the work of the project. That was actually very interesting. It was one of those first experiences of being held really accountable.
Right.
I thought I was being held accountable by working for different associations and running different associations and chairing in different associations. But this was kind of a different kind of responsibility, being held responsible at a different level, because the managing director of Victim Support Finland had to report to the National Slot Machine Association what's going on.
Sure.
So I had to deliver on what's going on in order for her to be able to report forwards.
Yeah, exactly.
The pressure was different.
Right.
But it also, I learned from that. I learned from that a lot.
Apart from the pressure, we talked about the for example, power distance that
Yeah.
exists in Kenya
Yeah.
compared to Finland, and how that is seen in the work life. That in Kenya, for the most part, the lead, the manager, the director, whoever it is, has the ability to make the decisions. You are just the passive receiver, just like in school.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas here, the power distance is a lot closer or smaller. How did you approach that, considering what you knew behind in Kenya, what work was like, what being the boss meant, and what being the boss here in Finland meant?
Well, I think, that's actually well structured question, in the sense that I had a problem with dealing with what you call horizontal structures of administration or governance or leadership or whatever you want to call it, or authority.
Right.
Because I was so used to these vertical systems where things work up and down, and but this, and in the sense that I was expecting my superiors to tell me what I'm supposed to do, and I was supposed to deliver it.
Right.
And they were like, "You're the expert, you should tell us what we're supposed to be doing so that we can be able to do it."
Exactly. Yeah.
So there was actually times where there was conflict of understanding, or actually conflicts of approach, where there would be almost like stalemates.
Exactly.
Like, who's telling who? Okay, who's supposed to say? Not because there's a conflict in what's being said,
Right.
but are you supposed to tell me what we're going to do, or am I going to tell you what we're going to do?
Right.
So that was something that I had to learn over time, and it's not that it happens automatically, but you should be prepared for it.
Yeah.
I at the currently at the ministry, I work very directly with the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Justice, and he is a very candid, straightforward fellow, who makes it absolutely clear. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know.
Right.
If I don't understand, I'll say I don't understand.
Right.
If I have nothing to say about it, I'll say I have nothing to say about it.
Right.
So when the playing field is made that clear,
Right.
then it's like he'll send me an email. Okay, Peter, I don't know. I got this email. I have nothing to say about this.
Right.
What do you think?
Right.
I'll say, okay, I think this, that, and the other. Okay, can you respond to this then directly as well?
Right.
So he doesn't tell me what to say.
Right.
He relies on my expertise as somebody who might know better to say what's supposed to be said. And this is something you have to get used to.
Exactly. And even within our regular jobs that people might have, these basic background differences can mean, the difference between continuing to have a job or being fired.
Yes.
Not only about how you're adapting to the system, but then also your expectations, the expectations others have of you.
Yes.
Because if you grow up not being taught to, be creative and just go do things, search for knowledge, look for things, then inherently that becomes very difficult for you to just one day start doing.
Yeah, it's a skill you have to work on.
Right.
Because sometimes, actually two aspects. Sometimes the request is not respond to this. The request is find out about this and give me an answer on how to respond to this.
Right.
In 15 minutes. In an hour.
Right.
By lunch.
Right.
So you have to know, to have the skills to be able to gather information and to make inferences and conclusions very quickly.
Yeah.
And second of all, you have to be honest. If you don't know something, say that you don't know.
Exactly.
The most offensive thing, or one of the most offensive things you could do to people who are used to working in a very horizontal system is creating the impression that you know, yet you do not.
Exactly.
If you don't know, just say it.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Right. Right.
Openly.
Yeah. Yeah. And very good to clarify that in the, people working in the horizontal system,
Yes.
which applies in Finland.
Yeah.
So I think you were referring to your current job in this case.
Yeah.
Take me back one step, and when you started with the Ministry of Interior. How did you start? And
well, that's I call that a leap of faith, because when I saw it was another position for a project manager, but this was a national project.
Right.
This was a 10 million euro project.
Right.
For 3 years.
Right.
To develop integration education systems.
Right.
And I looked at the application, and in typical form, I was like, there is no chance in heaven that I would be able to get this job. But then I got the encouragement to apply for the job, and I did.
Mm-hmm. You got the encouragement from who?
From somebody close to me at that point in time.
Who was
names and mentioned? Yeah.
Sure. Were they in the system?
No.
Right.
Somebody totally outside the system told me.
Yeah.
Apply.
Very good. Okay.
They told me, names and mentioned that you're good enough. I think these are the specific words.
Yeah.
You're good enough.
Yeah.
And I actually, despite those words, which were like, if you think about the weight of those words, it's somebody believing in you.
Of course. Yeah.
I applied for the job because there was a little bit of coercion. Not because I believed the words, but because somebody was coercing me to apply for the job.
Yeah.
Like pushing me to apply for the job.
Right.
So I applied for the job.
Right.
And Lord behold, I was invited for the interview.
This is good, and this is maybe a very important point, because a few weeks ago, was it 3 weeks ago, I was talking to a CEO, a Finnish guy now, who was originally from Nigeria, who was a CEO of an IT company here. I'm not going to say his name, but he was saying that he had posted a job for the company, and he had only one person who was of African descent in this case, and he was hoping that there would be a lot more people with immigrant background applying. And then he figured, I'll go ahead and ask him anyways to come in for the interview. And when he asked him, he was like, I was not going to apply, because I've applied to so many jobs, and then I'm told that I'm not good enough, or I don't get the job, period. Or I don't even get invited most of the time. So, but then he figured last minute he applied for it. And I think my point to this is that there are many people, especially with immigrant background here, who have the story of, maybe trying but not getting through, or also which makes them think that maybe they're not good enough in certain things. And I think sometimes it's good to have that leap of faith.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith, and actually two aspects. And now I'm going to speak from the position of the government, not the government, but from the ministry, or from a civil servant's perspective. This problem is not unfamiliar. Actually, my colleagues at the Ministry of the Employment and the Economy have commissioned a small survey that's going to bring this to light.
Okay.
People with African background will have to probably 3 to 5 times put in 3 to 5 times more applications just to be called for an interview.
Oh, right.
It's not something that's not new, but the leap of faith is important for 2 aspects. One, you being called for an interview is not simply going to be because of your CV looks good or not.
Right.
There are so many factors that are going to influence on you being called for that interview.
Of course. Sure.
And second of all, your merits your qualifications, despite whether you're called or you're not called for the interview, will never be diminished by sending 100 or 15 or 10 or 10 applications.
Right.
Your merits are your merits. Nobody can ever take them away from you.
Right. True.
So be encouraged. And actually, the first point where I said that the circumstances around the interview are, I came to realize why I was called for that interview years after I had actually moved on from the job.
Right. Yeah.
It was just that my application landed on the right desk at the right time in the right circumstances.
Right.
And there was an individual who believed the sentence without knowing me personally that this guy is ready.
Right.
They believed that sentence and they were able to stand for that statement until I got the job.
Did you remember what the sentence was?
You remember when I told you when I wanted to apply for the job, somebody told me, "You're ready for this."
Right. That was
somebody believed that.
Yeah.
Somebody really believed that.
Excellent. Yeah.
Somebody really believed that. But I didn't know until this person was... I went for the interview and she was in the process of presenting me as the person to get the job, but had faced so much resistance that she had to arrange a separate ad hoc meeting with the then minister in the parliament buildings for 15 minutes to convince the minister, who was able to lay way for me to get in.
Wow.
But if this one person didn't believe and didn't put in the effort to fight for that, what she believed, there wouldn't have been a chance.
And this one person did not know you?
No. That was the most interesting thing.
Right.
But the thing was that she had reached a point in her career where she had employed so many people in government, but the very fundamental goal of employing somebody with a different background, a qualified person with a different background in government had never materialized. And this was the time. And so she believed that if not now, then I would never be able to do it. And so she stuck to that principle as well. Not only because I had a different background, but she believed that this guy can do it.
Wow, that's interesting. That it takes that moment of faith, basically, for when everything seemed to come together. And a big project, national project. And I guess from there, you ended up landing.
Yes. The project was going very well. It was funded by Finnish Cultural Society, the Swedish Cultural Society. The ministries had put in money for themselves.
What would you think was the most important, before you even go to this current job, what would you think was the most important thing you guys got achieved in that project?
Well, I think I was offered this position. Actually, by then it was a senior advisor at the Ministry of the Interior. Soon after I had started with the project, probably 6 or 7 months. Somebody left the position of senior advisor open, and I was very interested in it because it had something to do with Etno, and I had been an Etno member. As part of this racism network. I was a part of an Etno member in Western Finland 16 years ago. So Etno was somehow familiar to me. And I also saw it as an opportunity to seal the loop. Like from being a measly, naive member one day, and then at some point in time being its Secretary General, I was like, wow, this would be like the story of my life. So when this opportunity was made available, I jumped for it. What the project did is they actually funded pilot projects, 13 pilot projects in 13 different municipalities or joint municipalities, where they tried different methods of carrying out integration education. So language learning, on-the-job training, teaching or language teaching for the illiterate.
Right.
Things. So it was, in the sense, it was very experimental, which
Mm-hmm.
was very necessary.
Right. Yeah.
Because the integration education that had been there before was very structured, very rigid.
Yeah.
It wasn't very flexible. So in that sense, they were able to try many things. And from there,
Mm-hmm.
many of the municipalities have developed different projects and different kinds of methods
Right.
that they fund.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was very successful.
Okay, very good.
It was very successful. And the person who took over the project from me is still working as a permanent member of the Ministry of Labour and the Economy at the integration unit.
Very nice.
Very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a win-win for
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this kind of takes us to your current job.
Yeah.
Can you explain a bit about what you do?
Okay, so Etno is it's an advisory body.
Mhm.
It's and what I mean by an advisory body is the government, central government makes a decision, a decree,
Right.
where it states that in order to foster communication or actually dialogue and good partnership with especially new migrant communities in the country, we need a body, we need an organ that allows these communities to somehow to be in touch with current issues
Right.
on policy, on legislation that's happening in government. So this advisory board was created in the late 90s. 1998 was the first advisory board, and the impetus was to put representatives of key ministries and representatives of associations representing different population groups, especially new migrants and new Finns or whatever term you want to call them, on the same table to discuss common issues. So there's lots of issues about integration, there's lots of issues about migration, equality, fundamental rights, issues that are of interest to these particular migrant groups that are represented in the board. So the board has grown from being a single national board to being a national board with 4 regional bodies, and then from 4 regional bodies now to 7 regional bodies that are actually coordinated at those regional centers where I started working in the very beginning.
Full circle.
So the people who I used to work with then are the people I still work with now, especially the people in the Pirkanmaa or Tampere region.
Right.
So the idea is to create a platform where different population groups, organized population groups, can have constructive dialogue on government issues, policy issues.
So one of the reasons why I admire what you guys do and like what Etno stands for is, I think, embodied in this quote, which I'm gonna steal from Bozoma St. John, who's a one of the best marketers in the world. Did Uber, Apple Music, etc. But she said, we spend far too much time complaining about the way things are and forgetting that we have the power to change anything and everything. And I think this goes to show, because for me, when I look around, especially in our present society, of course there's a bunch of racism going on, but then there are also these other sides that just throw firewood to the fire, talking about all these things that are going wrong without coming up with solutions. What do you think from this perspective? Is this the role of Etno, in the sense that you guys become this force for talking about these things that we can do better, instead of saying that we have all these things, racism things going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need to be able to talk about those
definitely.
issues.
Yes, we need to.
There is racism, there is discrimination, but then what are these things that we can do to solve them? Actual things. What are individual roles that we all have that we can do? For example, in the hiring part, if you're in a position to hire, are you actually helping solve this issue? That you're hiring people who are qualified but wouldn't have the chance otherwise?
Well, actually, I'd say Etno's role is twofold in relation to your question. We need channels through which people can bring forth these discrepancies or problems that they see in society.
Sure.
That's absolutely, that's a no-brainer. We definitely need that, especially in a society like this one, whereby the welfare of every individual is very important.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need channels through which the concerns of basic individuals, let alone groups, should be able to be forwarded in one way or the other.
Right.
But the positive part is that what we try to do, both through disseminating information and through giving any kind of support that we can give, especially to our members, is in bringing up those good practices and good ideas to solve some of those problems that we see. Despite having many problems, we have many actors in society who do tremendous work to tackle some of these problems that we are facing. And to somehow highlight this good work is somehow downplayed by all the problems and all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle to bring this positive stuff also to light.
Right.
We had a meeting yesterday with our regional coordinators, and some of the things that our regional partners do, they're just amazing. Different kinds of very good campaigns, youth empowerment, women's rights issues, because discrimination is a problem, but it's just one of the many problems that we face. But there's also very many good solutions that are being.
Yeah, and I personally believe the noise over good things, needs to be pushed a little bit more. We need to applaud all these, some of these great things that are happening that people are doing to help, close the gap. Because I think that noise, if it becomes a bit bigger, can actually drown out some of these horrible things that are hopefully.
Yeah, I believe so. And unfortunately, many of the complaints, both legitimate and illegitimate, or good or bad, only a small fraction of them end up making a difference. This is a very sad reality of things.
That's my whole point as well.
Yeah,
right.
It's very sad because knowing government structures, sorry that I interrupted, knowing government structures, constructing problems into policies is one of the most, actually it's a fascinating process, but to construct a problem and to make it into a public policy is one of the most fascinating things, the most difficult things you could probably do.
Absolutely nothing wrong with coming out and telling what are these horrible things that are happening in our society. But we spend way too less talking about the solutions.
Exactly, I agree.
The things that we are doing.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and in addition to what you guys do, you came up with the Etno report.
Yeah.
The Right to Belong.
Yeah.
Which proposes measures to support the construction of identity and strengthen the sense of belonging among multicultural youth.
Yeah.
A few things jumped out from that report. Yeah. And I believe you guys have the English version coming out.
Yes, we do have the English version, and I'm going to give you the links to actually the English, Russian, Swedish, and Finnish version, so that maybe you can link them to the video.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll add that to the video. But some of the things that stood out here, and I'll read here. Every young person has the right to pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
They should be able to define their dreams. They shouldn't be guided according to stereotypes.
Yeah.
But all professions should be real opportunities in study and career guidance. Some people will argue that there are structures that are limiting that are perhaps stopping that for some young people, not being able to dream big enough. What would you say to that?
Well, structures will always be there in every society, whether they're from the societies we come from or the society where we live in right now, be they socioeconomic structures, be they educational structures, be they those structures and obstacles within those structures are prevalent in every society.
Sure.
Including this one. So I would say that when it comes to creating a sense of belonging for our youth, I was actually speaking in Rovaniemi about 2 weeks ago at a certain panel discussion for youth and social media, and the highlight of this seminar was when the panelists were youth themselves, speaking about how they use and how they think and how they relate to social media. And there was a young man and 3 young ladies, probably in the late teens or early 20s, and there was one young lady from I think Bangladeshi background, and 2 native girls and native Finn, and I was like, you guys represent the future of this country.
Right.
And what I meant by that was that we have to start thinking future orientedly, in the sense that the leaders and the shapers of this society will be very different from what we see today in probably the next 30 years.
Right.
And we should instill this image or this thought in our youth that soon it's going to be your turn to lead this country.
Right.
And when I say our youth, I mean all of them. I mean youth from different backgrounds.
Exactly. Right.
And that's what we should strive for. We should strive for all our youth to be our leaders for tomorrow. They're going to be taking care of us, PJ, when we retire.
Right.
So
if we retire.
If we retire. So maybe to maybe stress on your point that the sense of dreaming, at least from the way I look at it, is that we shouldn't settle for making our youth think that they are going to somehow be saved from the burden, from the tax burden that's waiting for them when they are the majority taxpayers in this country. They'll have an enormous task to carry this welfare society on their backs to make it somehow work.
Right. Yeah, they do. And I sure hope that there are more policies in place to fight for equity instead of just equality. That people who need the help can be pushed a little bit further so that they can be hopefully around the same par as the rest.
Let me just add on to the I remember I didn't specify on the obstacles. So a concrete example, let me answer this by a concrete example. Actually, next month, in about 2 weeks, we're going to have a meeting with colleagues from a few other ministries where we are going to be discussing about concrete measures that can be applied to somehow encourage more recruitment of youth or people with migrant backgrounds into public office.
Interesting.
But it requires a change in thinking, a change in culture, a change in mentality.
Yeah.
That's very slow.
Yeah.
And the right people in the right places have to start thinking a bit differently in order for this to become an ongoing process.
Yeah. I'm going to change the direction a little bit because this is a very, very important point. But when you think about what you've been able to achieve so far and think about perhaps when you were younger, your dream, what was your dream? Did you pick yourself being in this position?
No way.
Right.
Never ever. The path.
Yeah.
Let me talk about the path. The path is very important in the sense that your path is different from mine. Let's recognize that the obvious part. But there is no set path. But for the very few who knew straight from childbirth, I'm going to be a footballer, and they ended up becoming Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi or whatever. But the path was not clear even for people like Michael Jordan.
Right. True.
Who end up becoming the greatest of what they did. But So believing in something greater at the very end is very important. At least for me, it's very, very important. And as I said, my Finnish is better today than it was yesterday because it's still a process.
Right.
I don't feel as though I have achieved anything with my Finnish language skill. I have lots to learn.
Gotcha.
And then when I'm done with that, I still have Swedish to learn. And when I'm done with that, I'll have something else to learn. So it's an endless, lifelong learning process.
Okay, perhaps we can segue to get a little bit more personal, as if this wasn't personal enough.
Yeah.
How do you define success? What is success to you?
Oh, yeah. When I was young, coming from where I came from, success was measured mainly in financial abundancy and social status.
Right.
But at the moment, living this long in a welfare state,
Yeah.
things have changed a little bit. Perspectives have shifted.
Right.
I'd say my success is finding balance, especially for us, what I call transnationals, who have multiple nationalities and have multiple obligations in different nations.
Sure.
Finding the right balance. So finding the balance between my family, my work, my extended family, and my personal ambitions here and in my country of origin.
Right.
That's success. That balance. That's success.
Yeah.
When I can maintain that balance and feel that I'm not stressed or overburdened by one or the other, I'm very successful.
Yeah, and I'm glad to know that it has actually changed, coming from the British kind of system to the Finnish system.
Yeah, I don't know whether I don't think my parents are very glad about that because they are still, they work based on that old school British type of system where success is measured in very different tangibles. So when I see my mother. When I see her, when I travel back or when she's visiting, she will for 100% sure raise the issue of me completing my PhD before she dies.
Right.
That is a guarantee.
Right.
So that's why it's on your list.
Right.
It'll have to be done.
Yeah, right. But then how if success is measured in those times, how do you see failure?
Failure is well, of course, then it's the opposite of the balance. It's giving up on one of these aspects.
Right.
Not being disciplined enough to maintain one of these aspects.
Interesting.
So, and the other aspect of failure is losing touch with the big horizon.
Right.
For me, that's the big fear.
Right.
If you lose touch with the big horizon, like the PhD, it's there.
Right.
It's something I'm still looking forward to.
Yeah.
It'll never go away.
Right.
And when it goes away, then I'll start thinking I'm beginning to loosen up. I'm really not.
Right.
I'm not on my toes.
Right. True.
So it's losing touch with that big horizon, the big dream in front.
Yeah.
That's failure.
And I think one of the big issues as well is many people don't necessarily know where they're going.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a bad, for me, actually, that's a nightmare.
It is, yeah.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah,
At least know where you're going for the next 2 years.
Right, right.
If you're not going to school, then you're doing a job or you're doing charity.
Right.
Or doing something.
Yeah, good point. Can you tell me, because from all the things that we've discussed, that you've talked about, your upbringing and family and school, being here in Finland, what would you say is something that you've invested in, whether it's time, money, whatever, that has helped you the most in getting to where you are today?
Oh, that's a good one. I've invested in my brain.
Right. Yeah.
I've invested in my brain. My brain is an investment.
Right.
I literally believe that.
Right.
And that's why I have a very bad relationship at the moment with my phone, because I think my phone is is eating away on my investment.
Yeah.
And I think many people will relate to this.
Right.
Your brain is the greatest asset that you have.
Absolutely.
You should invest in it. And this sounds cliche, but this is just, I believe without investing in my brain, I wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
I would definitely, no way I would be here.
Do you have a quote or a book or a song or whatever that kind of inspires you, that has helped you in this process to get you?
Actually, it's not something that has. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Do I have a book? There's quite many books.
Right.
The funny thing I realized about the books is that they're mainly academic books.
Yes.
So they're very boring books
Yeah.
that have inspired me to want to learn more or to do some academic work or do something like that.
Yeah.
But if there's something to read, and this is universal to anybody, is read the Constitution of the country where you live in.
Ah, right.
Read the Constitution of the country where you live in, because you will try.
Right.
You will understand the people you are living with better.
Interesting.
So this is actually a challenge to you.
Yeah.
It's not very difficult to read the Finnish Constitution.
Have you read the Constitution? I haven't. I will. Well, this is a challenge.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Most of the parts are boring,
Right.
but many of the parts are very interesting, because you'll understand how a society relates to 4 elements which are important to me. To fundamental rights, your rights as a person.
Right.
You'll understand how a society thinks about democracy.
True.
You'll understand how a society relates to rule of law. And you'll understand how a society relates to gender equality and equality in general.
Equality, Right.
So, which I think are 4 basic pillars of any good society.
Right.
So I really recommend that.
Yeah. I'll ask you a last question in 2 parts. And the first part is, when you think of your life and what you've done, I know it hasn't gone this way because you've had different things.
Yeah.
What do you think, just today, if you look at your life, you would be remembered for? What do you feel your legacy would be?
Oh, I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't want to think so far.
Right.
I've acquired a very, very bad habit of being over modest and not trying to think too big about myself, which is something very not good.
That's why I forced you into the question.
Yeah. Now you put me in a rut. Put me in a tight spot. But good person, good dad.
Right.
Good person, good dad.
Okay.
I think that to myself, not to anyone else, I want to be a change maker. I want to leave the sense within myself that, hey, actually I made a difference.
Right.
There. But it's not for anyone else.
And
for other people, it's maybe dad or good person. That's most important. But for myself, it's you changed something.
Right. And you think you would be remembered for that today, as having?
To some extent, yes. To some extent, yes.
And then the second part is, when you look at yourself after you retire, later on, when you hit your natural death, for example, what would Peter K be remembered for? What would you like your legacy to be?
Wow. He will be missed in whatever he did. He will be missed. We will miss people like this. I have colleagues, not colleagues, actually friends who are retiring now.
Right.
People whom I started knowing in the mid-90s when I came to Finland, who are beginning to retire now. It's 25 years.
Yeah.
and I was actually at the retirement function of a friend, and I actually wrote her a quote and said, "These countries' builders and these countries' makers are not always found in history books, but they live on in people's hearts and memories forever." So these colleagues are very dear to me. They're the people who gave me the encouragement, who were able and embraced me into new roles and gave me and believed in me, and these are the people who shaped my Finland.
Right.
Not yours,
Right,
but
right.
my Finland.
Right, true.
Because the experience is personal at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So they shaped my country.
Right.
And these people mean a lot to me. So I hope when I will retire that somebody will have that same feeling.
What a fantastic end to this discussion. I couldn't thank you more, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
for
much,
coming,
Pete. Thank you,
Appreciate
Pete.
you.
This was a good experience.
Yeah.
This was a great,
Fantastic.
fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I
Till
hope
the
the
next
project,
one. Yeah.
till the next one. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.